Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of From the A to the. Wait, what's that? Why?
What's going on, buddy?
Why can't I do the podcast? Oh, you five's too many. We can't go through the same two guys. Five. Okay. Sorry, Kevin Cash said I can't do the podcast.
Oh,
I've done it too many
is it?
times. Sorry,
Oh,
guys. I'm out.
oh man. Ooh,
Oh, but no,
wow.
we will definitely get into that later. Starting
Yeah,
off though, KD, what's going on, man? How are you doing today?
man. Oh yeah, doing well. Good Thursday. We get a chance to watch our Falcons drop to 1-7 after we record this later tonight against the your buddy Christian McCaffrey. The one good thing about this game is that McCaffrey making his return tonight, he could at least put up some good numbers against a really bad defense.
Yeah, I need to make sure that there's nobody I'm playing in fantasy this week that has him because I don't want to get my hopes up for when Sunday comes around.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, like Katie said, it's a really fun show today we have going on. A couple of things we're going to get into. Our guest this week, if you're in the Bay Area, you listen to the Morning Roast, you know him very well. Bonta Hill's going to be here with us. We're going to talk about his career and obviously the World Series, a lot of other things that are going on in sports right now. But to start off, Kevin, Big Ten football just came back. Pac-12 is going to get underway next week, and already, unfortunately for the Big Ten, they have a hiccup. Wisconsin, Nebraska game is canceled for this week because of an outbreak with the Badgers. And again, for all the applauding and what we were doing for the Big Ten for handling this or trying to handle this as best as they can, this is definitely a blow for them.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing was, Wisconsin was essentially down to their fourth string quarterback after their, first string quarterback got injured, their second string quarterback got COVID, and their third string quarterback got COVID. So they were down to a fourth stringer. And obviously, that would make things very tough to play. I saw like Paul Feinbaum kind of rail against the Big Ten for the 21-day quarantine or whatever, but I don't get like why you would be upset with a conference being more cautious. Like, shouldn't we err on the side of caution? I felt like at least in that aspect, like the Big Ten was taking a lot of undue flack. I mean, it's not just the Big Ten. We've seen the SEC have all sorts of problems with this. Like Florida practiced for the first time in like 2 weeks or something this week because of all the issues they had, and Dan Mullen, clamoring for 90,000 fans at the Swamp. And so, I mean, I don't fault Kevin Warren at all. I don't fault Wisconsin for wanting to, obviously it's not safe to play a game right now when you have a COVID outbreak on your team, and your head coach Paul Christ has COVID as well. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but Wisconsin can still contend for the Big Ten title provided they can get back to games in a week or so. Because you can't miss more than 2 games or something like that unless or you can't play fewer than 6 games unless everyone plays fewer than 6 games. I think is the Big Ten rule. So hopefully they can nip this in the bud. And this is the way you have to do it if you're Wisconsin, though. I don't see any other way, and I don't see why the Big Ten shouldn't be less cautious than they are.
No, I agree 100%. And I think the thing for me, if you want to argue anything, it might be just the 21 days. Like, I think for me, if you would say it should be 14, that's the only way I could say, okay, I can kind of see that. Because, before when you talked about going into quarantine, when everything first came out, it was 2 weeks, stay away from everyone until you get the two negative test results, excuse me. So from that standpoint, you might have an argument, but outside of that, if there's anything where you want players to come in before that 2 week period, you're absolutely bonkers. Now, the thing that we do have to remember with Paul Feinbaum, though, is who pays his checks. Of course, he's not going to say that someone needs to come back before that 2 week timetable, because what is this conference doing?
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. And I mean, obviously, there was a whole thing with Nick Saban where he tested positive, and then they gave him 4 or 5 tests those next few days, and
Yeah.
he could be out on the field against Georgia. And again, as long as Nick Saban didn't have it, and I'm happy he didn't have it first.
Yeah, definitely.
Happy
Definitely.
that he got those negative tests and he was fine. But again, when you show in that conference in the SEC that you don't have to wait that long, yeah, he's going to back them. That's all that I read into that.
Yeah, and like the one thing, he was saying, oh, the CDC guidelines say 10 to 14 days. That's for like normal people who aren't about to play in a football game. Like, you think like, all right, you can't just isolate for 14 days, like have not done anything recovering from a potentially deadly virus, and then like the next day, day 15, be like, okay, cool, I'm good to go. Like, there should be a little more caution put in place for people who are going to be going to battle essentially when they can really injure themselves on a field, and like to have just like 2 weeks, coming off 2 weeks of not being able to do anything doesn't seem like it'd be very safe, not just from like a COVID perspective, but from like a bodily harm perspective.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why all these conferences that did wait, they set that timetable back. No, we're going to wait 4, 5, 6 weeks before we start playing games because we need to go through some workouts, a training camp, however that looked, because I know obviously it's going to be different in 2020 than it has been in the past. And even with that, how many times in these first few weeks have we seen very sloppy games because teams are just, and players, and this is no disrespect to them, this is just natural, teams just aren't ready to play right away.
Yeah,
And that's something that happens under normal circumstances. Game week 1, or how we had the last few seasons, a week 0, the games aren't as exciting because there's a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of sloppy play, but that's expected. So
yeah.
that's why all these conferences had to wait. So no, to your point, you're absolutely right. It only makes sense that you're not just going to throw a guy right back into it without either getting practice reps or something of the sort.
Yeah, and a bit of an extreme example is Oklahoma. I mean, like in July, they had like this huge COVID outbreak on their team. And, obviously, I mean, they did continue to practice, which was a little mind boggling to me, but like they still had like enough guys out. And, a couple months later, they've lost a couple of games in the season. You wonder, all right, we've seen how COVID could affect athletes already this year. There were some prime examples in the NBA, like Kendrick Nunn, who like just didn't seem to be the same player after he had that COVID diagnosis. So like this is a serious illness, and it isn't that much of a stretch to think that, well, athletes' performance can take a serious hit. And if you have enough of them at a big time school like Oklahoma, I'm not saying the coronavirus is why Oklahoma lost a couple of games. And part of me, the guy who likes college football parity, even though it never happens, is like happy that someone else is going to win the Big 12 this year. But, that's not something that can just be completely thrown out of the window with Oklahoma's season, because they had that huge outbreak, like, getting ready in training camp or just before it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just one of those things where we even talked to some of the WNBA players a few weeks ago. And obviously, if anyone who follows the WNBA or listen to that episode, obviously there's that finite window where you have time off between the WNBA season being done and then you got to go play internationally overseas for that season. Yeah. And even though they wanted to take time off, again, one of the questions was, okay, well, how, even though I know you need to take time off for your body because you barely get it in the course of the whole year anyway, what is that window of, okay, I need to take time off, but I can't take too much time off before I get rusty, and then I have to start getting back in the flow again. It really is one of those things where, again, so much of sports, especially in football, is about rhythm. It's all about repetitiveness. And if you can't repeat certain movements and things over and over again, not just for yourself, but for the person next to you, or if you're a receiver with a quarterback, obviously on the offensive line, you have to be step in step with people, knowing where the guard's going to be on this double team before you chip up to a linebacker or whatever it may be. It's going to throw you off.
Yeah, no, it really is. And that's just the weird, funky, quirky thing about this season. And, there are teams that have played one game to this point. There are teams that have played 6 games. And it's just something that's, hopefully just an anomaly to 2020.
Yeah, and again, Wisconsin, Nebraska this week has been canceled. Obviously, Nebraska has been pushing hard to find a way to get that game rescheduled. Kevin Warren so far saying no to that.
Yeah, like how can they reschedule it? Like there is no space in the season. Now they're trying to play an FCS school. I think Chattanooga is who.
Yeah, they tried to play Chattanooga, and the big part of that. So with a little bit of reference, from what I understood, Nebraska was looking only at schools or programs that had tougher COVID protocols and restrictions than the Big Ten did. That was one of the reasons why Chattanooga was on there. And
Gotcha.
but again, at that point, unless you have a board that goes in depth over every single restriction, regulation, like maybe there's one thing here that the Big Ten's doing that's better than what Chattanooga is doing, or maybe it's something here, or maybe it's just one. If you're not on the same page, because again, this is exactly why the conference only schedules are made in place, is that everybody has the same protocols.
Yeah.
So even if they're saying that they have tighter or stricter regulations than what the Big Ten's doing, do you really just trust it, like just off hip like that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
It's not surprising that this is Nebraska, the school that's doing this. I mean, they were the ones that just wanted to play like the virus didn't exist. Months ago, it was like them, Iowa, and Ohio State, who were like the three schools that wanted to play immediately. And not super surprising, I guess. And considering how their first game went, that was Ohio State they were playing, but they might want a confidence builder after that one.
Yeah, but the crazy thing for me, though, from the football standpoint of it, is if you're Wisconsin, is there a curse on you in terms of having really good quarterback play? I mean, Kevin, you mentioned that Graham Mertz was the quarterback, and he had to be the quarterback because of injuries and other COVID issues. He throws 5 touchdowns in his first game. Like, when's the last time we really, I think, maybe Russell Wilson for the most part, consistently, we talked about Wisconsin and quarterbacks.
And who
it's a great running game, a huge offensive line, and a really good defense with that one linebacker probably that just makes every single play on the field.
Yeah, I mean, going back to like when I was watching college football as a kid, it was Ron Dane, the Heisman Trophy winner. It was always about that running game. And I'm trying to think of like a really good quarterback out of Wisconsin outside of Russell Wilson in the last 20 years, like someone who like really made a name for themselves. And I could be missing someone, so don't take my word for it. Check me up on it. But like, you think back to like some of the quarterbacks they've had recently, and that wasn't, Mike Leach wasn't the coach of that team. I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it always was the case. And obviously, we played them in the 2013, I believe, since it was on New Year's. Rose Bowl.
January, yep.
Right. And the thing for them, it was the fly sweep motion, and then you were going to run the ball right up the middle or off the guard or off the tap. And if you could stop that then and put up maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns, you had a good chance of beating Wisconsin. And obviously, we were able to do that. And then, of course, shout out Uswa for getting that game-sealing pick at the end.
Go Bells.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. Another Bellarmine alum for you.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just as long as I can remember. And again, not to say that they've had some guys that are good enough to get the job done. I mean, they win the Big Ten West almost every single year outside of maybe one recently where Northwestern did it. And then, of course, Iowa the year where we played them in the Rose Bowl. But for the most part, their recipe for success, at least up to that point, has worked. But now you see it's like maybe they do have something going at quarterback, and here we are.
Yeah, total shame. I mean, hopefully Mertz can get back healthy. That 3 weeks from today, I guess the 3 weeks. Their next game would be like against Michigan. I want to say like November 14th or something like that, to where the next game that he could potentially play, depending on the exact date of when he contracted the virus and tested positive. So, speedy recovery to him and the Badgers. And, it's always good to see a team, try to push Ohio State eventually, and maybe Wisconsin could be that team in December.
No, absolutely. And maybe we even see a team before December get to do that. I think a lot of people have been talking in Michigan circles about how that culture and just the attitude has finally changed. And so we'll see, because obviously the only way you can really test that is how do they look against Ohio State, and that's going to be interesting. Penn State, I know they took that loss last week against Indiana, but you can't count them out just because of that one game. James Franklin's going to have that team back ready to go. But my question is, how did they not go for 2 at the end of that game? How did Penn State
That was crazy.
Over 2-point conversion?
Yeah, that's I mean, that's an easy go for two. Like you
Yes,
get that, you're up 9, the game is
it's
over.
done. It's
It
done.
is over. I just didn't get it at all. I mean, they obviously shouldn't have scored in the first place, but if you do score, you go for two and take any, and then all right, you don't get it, then it's still 7. They're not like
Yeah, they're not going to
all
go
right,
for two. I don't think Indiana in that situation is going to go for two right there to win a game.
yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe they would, considering what they did in the second overtime, but still, like just I mean, you give yourself a much better chance to win if you go for two. And I will say, I was listening to the game on a drive down to Salinas, and I saw the replay later. I don't think Penix got in. Like if they ruled that not a touchdown initially, I don't think that would have been overturned to a touchdown.
It would have been tough. The only thing for me is that the only way you can really tell is when did the ball hit the sideline and then where was the nose? From all the angles I saw, it looked like the nose was over. I know he hit the pylon, but the ball was already out of bounds before that, so that was irrelevant in my opinion. But
Yeah.
when he hit this ball hit the sideline, there was one angle that was like almost right up on the ball. It was a great job by that whole camera crew. And it just looked like, okay, I can't see the nose, but that make just thinking about it again, you can't really use just think like thoughts like that. It's just got to be clear cut yes or no when you're looking at a review to overturn a call.
Yeah.
But when looking at it, I was thinking, okay, if I can't see the nose, but here's the goal line, my intuition is telling me that that ball is over the goal line.
Yeah, and again, like there wasn't clear cut evidence
Yeah.
to say he didn't get in. It's just like when you see that ball hit the sideline first before it hits the pylon, you're automatic like thinking it's all right. He didn't get in, and my like I guess my interpretation of things is probably clouded by the fact that I was listening to Penn State radio's call of this, and so these guys were like, "Oh, he didn't go in. He didn't get in. He didn't get there." You know, they were like, "They're probably not going to overturn it, but he didn't get in." And I will say for someone who had like a pretty like subpar stat line, Penix was pretty good. Like I was really impressed by Penix, but he was like 19 to 36. He was under 50% for most of that game. But you know that drive to send it to overtime, he made some really good throws, and then of course, you know, put his body on the line to win that game for Indiana, who are now 2-22 all time against Penn State.
And there you go. But I mean, that's the thing about sports, right? That one big moment at the end of the game can completely change your perception on how that game went. You know, believe me,
Yeah.
that's how people think about Matt Ryan. Like I said,
Yeah.
at the end of the game, what happened. But anyway, so like I said, moving on, obviously the Big Ten East, as always, is going to be very interesting to watch. Quick change, looking at the Pac-12 again, just a little over a week away now from the conference kicking off. And even there, they've had a couple scares. I know Oregon, I believe it was last week, had a scare where they had some positive tests, shut down operations for a little bit, but they came back to be false positives. Oregon's back in practice. And even Stanford, I know they've had a couple of cases. Stanford Daily, I was reading a report from them on it where, and I guess this kind of makes sense, where I think it was a little bit over half of the positive cases that have been reported right now on campus have come from sports teams. And I think the football team had 13 positive cases, but looks like that must have been spread out a little over time because it seems like they're all in practice and rolling right now. So looks like a good sign for everything going, at least hopefully on schedule for the Pac. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, 9 days from the taping of this Stanford season opener against Oregon. You know, Oregon and USC, the two ranked Pac-12 schools without having played a game. And I mean, this is a question we can dive in deeper later. But does the Pac-12 have a path to the college football playoff this year with just a 7-game season?
I think that you need a lot of crazy things to happen at the top. And your best bet, as always, I think will be the next few years, is that Oregon would be the team that runs the table. But they even have some question marks that they have to figure out for themselves. You got to replace Justin Herbert, who, shout out to him, by the way, is doing awesome with the
Incredible.
I tried to tell people like he's going to be just fine in the league.
Yeah.
But But anyway, going back to the point, you got to bring in the new quarterback. You have all those defensive studs, and I think they're still going to be a good defense. But you have so many guys who are not playing this year, opting out due to COVID. So, and of course, as we always know, and you talked about parity earlier, this is the Pac-12. Especially as soon as once that clock strikes about 6:30, and you're starting a game after that, all odds are in the air. There's no telling all the favorites, no matter what. Everything just goes out the window. But that's what makes watching Pac-12 football so much fun at the same time. And I think that I don't know if they'll necessarily compete for the playoff spot, but I think Arizona State is potentially that 1 or 2 years away from being there with Jaden Daniels and how good he looked last year.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, Jaden Daniels, really impressive quarterback. And kind of the joke is on us as the media. How much flack did Arizona State take 3 years ago when they hired Herm Edwards? And Herm Edwards in his press conference was like, I'm a Christian man. I don't know about you devils, like kind of insinuating that he didn't quite realize that the Sun Devils were their name. And the new leadership model, the CEO approach, everyone kind of panned it. And here we are, all right, so they haven't been national champions yet, and they haven't gone to a Pac-12 championship game. But people expected Arizona State to be like a 3-9, 4-8 team, and they've looked really, really good. And I think Herm's done a very good job there in Arizona State, much better job than I thought he was going to do. I am a huge Todd Graham believer. That I accidentally called him God Graham because that's what I would call him to my friends. I call him God Graham because I am a huge Graham guy. But and I thought he did a very good job at Arizona State. But Herm Edwards has done very well, and I think a lot better than most people thought, especially since he was on the older end of the collegiate coaching spectrum.
No, you make a great point. And because when you look at it, again, your whole thing is we've gone from talking about Arizona State as, well, are they going to beat Arizona this year? And that's the big question for them to now, are they ready to take that next step and compete in the Pac-12 South again? So you really have to give him credit because now they're up there with the potentially trying to knock on the door to get up there with the Utahs of the world and be in a perennial Pac-12 South contender. That's what people expect, especially with what they did against Oregon last year. That's one of those wins where it could be that you could look back on and say, this might be the where the program took a turn. Yeah. And that's how people look at it. I think obviously you look at Stanford, they had their fair share of the biggest upset in college football history. When you beat a number one USC team, and this is back when, of course, USC was USC, your expectations even inside the program, it starts turning. It's like, hey, no, we can compete with these guys. We can beat these guys. Let's do it consistently now. And then, of course, the run that Stanford made after that, speaks for itself.
Yeah, I'll never forget. This is kind of going down memory lane a little bit. I was engineering or doing stats for the Stanford-Arizona State game in 2007, the week before went down to USC. And Stanford lost 41-3. And I remember Mark Lawrence, KZSU, the chief engineer, institution at Stanford, was like, why are we even flying down to USC next week? We should forfeit the game and save ourselves the embarrassment. Because remember, Tavita Pritchard, I'm pretty sure that was his first collegiate start, was at USC.
That's right.
So it's a backup quarterback, 41-point underdogs on the road against the number 2 team in the country, who last year beat us on the farm 42-0. I thought we were going to lose by, maybe 100 points in that game. And it was just unbelievable. I couldn't my cousins were getting married. My cousin was getting married, and I rushed to a TV outside. When I saw that they were only down a couple, one possession in the fourth quarter, saw the final drive. That was the start of the new Stanford football era, where the year before we were punting on third down.
But that's the thing where it really just takes that one win, and then you start thinking about yourself a little bit differently. So we'll see if Arizona State, once everything kicks off, can ride that momentum off again. A big win last year. So we will take a quick break. As we mentioned, Bonta Hill will be on next from the Morning Roast. You are listening and watching the From the A to the Bay podcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to the From the A to the Bay podcast. And it is my pleasure to introduce, again, if you're in the Bay Area, you get up early. I'm sure you heard him on the morning roast. And if 3 years later, you're still asking who he is, here he is right here. Bonta Hill is with us. Bonta, what's going on, man?
What's up, Jordan? What's up, Kevin? Dana, how you guys doing?
Doing great.
Well,
Thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. But Bonta, I gotta ask, as a guy growing up who wanted to get into broadcasting, I always looked at the morning show as like kind of like the aha moment of being in radio broadcasting.
Right.
Like I grew up listening to the Doghouse on 94.9, and like that kind of like spurred my interest into getting into radio, even though I'm like not doing that kind of radio. I'm more on the play-by-play lane. But like it was like listening to a morning show like that or Howard Stern that like really got me in to radio broadcasting. So what does it mean to you to be a co-host on one of the premier radio stations doing a morning show in one of the biggest markets in America?
Yeah, it's kind of surreal, to be honest with you, man. When I got into this game, I was just looking to work in sports, whether it was radio, TV, newspapers, writing blogs, podcasting. I didn't really think about the morning show. And, I was happy in the middays, get a little sleep. Yeah, I was, radio show. I'm like, all right, man, I'm off at 2, 3, go to a little Warriors game, hang out with Kevin and Tim Roy and everybody over there at Chase or Oracle. And so it hasn't really dawned on me, man. A lot of people, like you just asked, like, man, what does it mean to work the mornings? What does it mean to work the mornings? And my first thought is like, man, it just means I got to wake up at 4 in the morning and go to bed early. You know what I'm saying? I don't even really, like, I haven't even grasped it that it's morning drive in the number 4, number 3 market in America. So it's been surreal, to be honest with you, man. And it's like, when I look back at it, take a step back, it's like, man, you're right. Like the Doghouse. We talk about Murphy Mack and KNBR. You talk about all these morning shows across the country, like being the premier slot. And so when this opportunity presented itself, I was just like, well, why not? It's everything else I've done in sports has kind of exceeded my personal expectations, just being on the station at 95.7 and having a morning show. So to be honest with you, it hasn't really sunk in yet. Maybe 6 years, maybe 6 months, maybe 16 weeks. Maybe it'll sink in that, man, I am on morning drive, and I'm setting the tone for the Bay Area with Shasky and Kate Scott. We're waking people up. We're going to have the first word on what happened the previous night. So maybe as time goes by, Kevin, that it'll sink in. But really, I haven't even grasped it yet. It just feels like I'm doing a radio show, just really, really early in the morning.
That's really cool. And I think you even hit on this too. If you had to go back and tell, the younger Bonta that, hey, guess what? You're going to be one of the main guys on this talk show, on the morning talk show. Would you believe it? Or like, what would you say to your younger self about where you are now?
I would have been like, man, you must be smoking some really, really good weed. You would be on the show. Seriously, man. Like, when I started this, I went back to school late. I went back to school like the age of 26. And I decided, I've been in the corporate world. I've made some money. Working at a coffee shop now. I'm going to give it one more crack. I'm always reading the newspaper. I watch sports all day long. Like, I would do this stuff for free. Like I'm sure you guys would. This is all we do. This is our hobby. This is our passion. So when I started off on this journey, just writing on a school paper at City College of San Francisco, I would have never thought 10 years later, like, oh, wow, I'm doing radio at 95.7 The Game. I'm on a show with Papa. I'm on a show, doing things with Marty Larry. I'm working with the big dogs in the Bay Area, knowing all the broadcasters, they know me on a first name basis. I would have said, man, Bonta, you're tripping. You were tripping. Just get the degree, be happy, get a good paying job, and go on about your business. But the younger Bonta, he would have been shocked. Even though I had this crazy little weird confidence that, hey, I may be able to make some things happen, Jordan. I may be able to make some headway here in the Bay Area, but I would have told younger Bonta, he's delusional. I'm like, bro, you tripping.
Bonta, I want to go back to like the early part of your career. You were mentioning you were in the corporate world and decided to go back to school at 26. I was reading a profile on you yesterday, and like sounded like you had like a pretty solid job at UPS where you could be there for a while, kind of move up and do that route. What was the impetus though that made you say, hey, why don't I give sports a chance?
What's funny is they fired me. They fired me. They basically made me sign a paper and say, get the hell up out of here. Now, to be honest with you, Kevin, like I had transferred hubs. Basically, I was working in South City, had a great rapport. You know, I'm working 30 hours a week, full benefits, having a nice little salary for a young, middling 25-year-old. So I'm like, man, I'm living a life. You know, in the nightlife, I could buy drinks, I could buy around for some folks. You know what I'm saying? I got it like that. So I transferred into a different hub, and you know, people were kind of out to get me there. They were like, who's this young hotshot who's, you know, a little arrogant, a little cocky, thinks he knows everything. And I'm wearing J's into the hub. I'm wearing different kicks, and I'm just doing my thing. Like, I'm getting the job done. And so I really got backstabbed there in a way where it was like they got me out just because they wanted me out. You know what I'm saying? They got me. It was really weird. It was the end of the shift, and all conveyor belts were done. I'm just waiting on one package. And I'm walking on. I'm like, man, there's no packages. It is somebody comes and they snitch and they suspend me. And they were basically out to get me. And I was like, at the end of the day, I was just like, you know what? This may be the best thing for me. You know, I go work at a coffee shop. I think it was Pete's Coffee Shop at the time. It was Pete's. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. This gives me an excuse to go back to school and kind of pursue a dream. And I had a friend send me some sports writing books, some sports broadcasting books. And I just walked in the next semester at City College like, hey, I want to write for the paper. And 4 months later, you know, I win this honorable mention award at a state convention. Like, hey, this guy wrote the 5th best game story on the spot game story. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea where the commas go. No idea how a paragraph, how long it was supposed to be, or how it's supposed to be structured in a newspaper. I just knew it based off of muscle memory of reading it my whole life. So UPS was great. I definitely wanted to get out of there. I was looking for a way out of there. They just made the decision for me a little earlier than I wanted to be, but it turned out to be the best decision ever. I thank them every single day that they let me go and helped me get on my grind.
So just even deep diving even more at that time at UPS, because I was in corporate a little while. I did some sales before I decided to go fully into sports. And any single chance I got, I'm talking to somebody about sports, right? If I'm not on a call with a potential client or a current client, we're talking about sports. And even then, people were just like, dude, what are you doing here? You need to be talking about this or that or on whatever. Did people ever say the same thing about you when you were working there at UPS and talking about sports or whatever with people?
Absolutely. There would be graveyard shifts I was working, and me and my homie Jermaine Belfry, still in my fantasy leagues, we would sit there on a graveyard shift from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. talking about Niners, Warriors, Giants, national sports. And people would be like, y'all literally just sat up there for 6 hours and talk sports. Like, y'all made me dizzy. Like, what are you doing? And so it really hit home one day. I'm living, this is right before PS let me go. Buddies were over at the crib. We're playing 2K, and we started watching Sports Center. And Stuart Scott's on there. And one of my homies, Igor Spivak, was like, man, Tay, and he's got some liquor in his cup. He's like, that's supposed to be you on the screen. That's supposed to be you. You always had a newspaper. You always talking sports. Bro, why you ain't doing that? And it kind of hurt. It was like, damn, like, am I a failure? Like, I have a good job. I got benefits. I'm able to pay my rent. We're chilling. Like, what do you mean? And so people were always like, man, you know everything about sports. Do you get out the house? Like, do you have any other hobbies? like, how do you know all these stats? And I just tell them it's a disease, man. It's just like, I can't remember anything else but Steph Curry's stat line from the night before, or Alex Smith's stat line from the night before. You know what I'm saying? So Jordan, like, I got that same little vibe where it's just like, bro, why are you here? Like, won't you like go announce a basketball game or figure it out? Like, but you should not be here because you know too much about sports. So that kind of helped, where people was just like, bro, you were meant to do this. This is all you talked about in high school, middle school, you know, after high school and at the crib or at the bar where all these cute women are walking by, and I'm sitting here talking about, man, I can't wait for that. The Niners play the Hawks this week, man. Like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people always said that. So I kind of got the same vibe, Jordan.
Yeah, so, I mean, despite having kind of all that support from your friends saying, hey, you should do this, you should get into sports, how much of a risk did it feel like you were taking when you decided to go back to City College and write for the school paper?
Man, that's a great question, man, because I didn't think I was going to make it the first month. I go into City College in their new journalism department, and luckily before I had a broadcasting class that I had took, so that basically helped me skip the requirements to start writing on a school newspaper. But I had an English class, and I'm in there, you know, I'm 25, 26 years old, and I'm looking around and there's all these 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, fresh out of high school. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here, bro? I'm too old to be in here. And I didn't think, honestly, Kev and Jordan, I didn't think I was going to make it in a month. Honestly, I was just like, all right, man, how much patience am I going to have, man? I need to make some money. I can't make, you can't make the money that you want to make while being a full-time student. So I was just like, man, is this really going to go down? Like, what am I doing? Like, what is the end goal? And at that time, I didn't know what the end goal was. I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, writing on that school newspaper, it kind of helped. Like, all right, I get to cover a game, a softball game. I get to cover a hoop game. And as I got more confidence in the classroom of just doing assignments, it's just like, you know what, I'm going to just grind. I'm going to be in this library all night. I'm going to get this paper done. I'm going to study these math quizzes. It was hard, man. It was really, really hard. There were some long nights at City where you're the only one up there and it's, it's cold. All your friends have already got a degree, or some of them, got good paying jobs and they're living a life and they're having fun. I'm sitting here like, I'm a 27-year-old student. Like, what am I doing with myself? How's this going to work? But each semester, I kind of set goals for myself each semester and each year, Kev, where I said, okay, where am I going to be at next year? And from when I first stepped back on campus, by the next year, I was a sports editor. And I was doing a public address announcing for the basketball teams at City College of San Francisco. So I was like, all right, I'm making some headway. The next year after that, I'm covering high school sports. I'm getting little clips in the Examiner. So I'm like 2 years in. I'm like, all right, we're making some headway. I know the money's not there, and I'm not really worried about that because if I keep doing this, it's going to come. But if you're doing it for the money anyway, you're in it for the wrong thing, right? It's got to be from the passion. It's got to be from the heart. And you got to really love it. And so each year, each semester, I started getting more and more and more, little promotions here and there. May not have been much, but I was getting a little bit more. I'm like, all right, I'm on the right track. And on top of that, oh, man, I get to transfer to a CSU. Oh, now I'm in line to get a degree. So even if I don't get a job at the Examiner or the Chronicle or 95.7 The Game, at least I'm going to get a degree out of this. And so, boom, I go to state. I'm already writing for a pro paper in the SF Examiner. I'm starting to cover college sports, starting to get around a little bit. So I think that first semester was so clutch for me, Kev, by just getting a little bit, by getting something like, okay, I'm writing on the school paper now. And all of a sudden the director is like, you know what? I want you to be the sports editor, man. You know your stuff. And to watch the sports page at City, which was a big accomplishment for me, was we're going from 1 page of sports to 3 pages of sports. Nice. Going from 1 page of sports to 4 pages with color. And it was like, oh, man, we made them relevant. And me and my staff, we really did a good job of covering those games and because they had a great program, right? Nobody knew about it. It's junior college. They're sending guys to Ohio State, Nebraska, Oklahoma. I'm like, man, let's really hone in on this and make it something. And so, we would put the newspapers in the coaches' mailboxes and make sure that they knew we was on their line and covering them. So I think, Kev, that first month for me going back to school was really, really key to just kind of gain some confidence and get something going, get some momentum going. And once that started moving, it was no looking back.
Bonta, I feel like everyone, especially in this industry, you have that one person that either helps get your start or helps get you going to motivate you. Obviously, for me, Kevin knows him for sure. Kari Jones was that for me at Stanford, really to give me a chance and really say, no, I think you can really do this and be that. Who was that person for you?
When I look back at it, there's been so many people here and there, whether they're classmates, whether they're teachers, professors. But I got to say the big break I got was with Marty Larry over at KBR doing Giants baseball. And Marty, he had a reputation within the building, like, oh, man, Marty wants to do Marty things, and he's not really fun to work with. So all of a sudden, my program director at KBR, assistant program director, Jen Vita, was like, hey, I want you to run Giants games on the weekends. And I just got weekends back. I was just graduated from SF State. I'm like, hey, this radio game ain't going nowhere, man. I'm doing it part-time during the week. And I was like, fine, Jen. And our first show together doing Giants baseball was an absolute wreck, absolute train wreck. I didn't know diamond notes or whatnot and one of the elements. And Marty's just staring at me like he's ticked off. And my boy Cody Pasby at the time, I saw him later that week at Oracle Park, formerly AT&T Park. I got to get used to that. But he was just like, man, Marty wasn't feeling you, man. He said, we got to get him on the same page. By that summer, to make a long story short, we were rolling. I told Jen Violet by that June, was like, hey, I'm doing this next year too. I want the weekends. And Marty really started putting me on. He was like, dude, you know your baseball. Like, he was kind of shocked at it because I was quiet, man. I'll just kind of do my job, and I didn't think I fit the culture there. So I was just like, man, I'm just getting a little paycheck, little pennies. He's like, dude, you know your baseball. Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on. We're gonna talk. And by the next year, that second year, we was just playing ping pong. And Marty was like, I want you to stay after your shift. Not, everybody else there, he'd be like, hey, where's Bonta at? Come in the main studio. I'm like, Marty, I'm off. I'm not getting in the studio. Let's take some calls. Hang out a couple more hours. I got a VIP pass outside lands towards the tail end of our tenure together. And he's like, we're cooking with hot grease. Stay another 30 minutes. I'm like, you know what? Marty's a good dude. And next thing you know, he walks in. I'm having one of the worst days ever at KMBR. I botched the updates. I'm botching names left and right. And he's like, hey, Greg Poppin listens to us. He wants you to call him. And Marty made that happen. So I owe a lot to Uncle Marty because he was like, he saw something in me that I didn't see. He's like, dude, you're smooth. You're good with people. You know how to talk to people. You're personable. You're humble. You're going to be all right in this game. You're going to be all right. And to this day, we still, text back and forth, man. So Marty Larry's the guy who really, I think, gave me my big break when I didn't even know it.
That's awesome to hear. And you've worked with a lot of different people in the Bay Area. You mentioned Marty. You had the show with Papa, of course, more recently, Steiny and Guru, and now you're a couple weeks into the Morning Roast. I'm curious, how long does it take to get into a flow with a new radio crew that you're working with? Even though you've known Shasky forever, right, and you know Kate, but how long does it take to get into that groove where, like you said, you're playing ping pong with them?
Right. It's it's really hard to pinpoint when you could do it. Like with Pop, I felt like it took us a while. I don't think we really caught our stride until I started driving a little bit and setting him up. And then all of a sudden we started flowing and the ratings started going up. And I think that's when we caught our stride. Marty, it took about, 3 to 4 months. With Kate and Shasky, I don't know if we have our flow yet, but I feel like it's going to happen sooner because, as you mentioned, Kev, Shasky and I have been doing the pre and post game with the Niners for like 3 years now. And so we already had that built-in chemistry. We know each other's cadence. We know when each other's hot. We know how to press each other's buttons. So I'm not worried about him. Kate, getting her involved because, as you mentioned, I worked with Kate a little bit at KMBR, but never in this capacity. And so getting Kate comfortable and up to speed where, I talk to her every day and I'm like, be aggressive. You be more aggressive. Cut me off if you need to. Because I don't want, what people were looking for in this show, they said, oh, they got the token female. Oh, they got the token female that you see on First Take or Undisputed. And I'm like, nah, this is not it, Chief. Kate knows her stuff. Absolutely. And I want her to be aggressive. I don't want her to break down those barriers to be like, hey, we got a female who's driving this ship and who's checking Shasky and I. So I'm anticipating us our flow really, really quickly. But you just never know, Kev. It could happen in 3 months. It could happen in 4 months. But you got to realize that there's going to be good days and bad days, right? There's going to be days where you're like, I really wasn't feeling that show. We weren't up on our game. But, everybody wants it. Everybody's passionate. Everybody's hungry. Everybody's energetic. And everybody's putting everything they have into it. So I think we're going to find our stride. And when we do, you'll know. But I think it's going to come sooner rather than later.
I think one of the things that I found interesting that we've talked about today was going back to when your boy's checking you about, why aren't you on there? Why aren't you talking when you're watching Stuart Scott? And the reason why I think everyone looks to Stuart Scott as that first real example of, black man being himself, right, on air. Mark Jones has been credited for it a lot lately with his references and everything. And so I just wonder, especially now, was there a certain moment where maybe before you weren't so comfortable to bring out certain styles of, your characteristics or just your personality as to where now it's, just let things flow?
Yeah, I think it's, that's a great question. And I'm glad you referenced Mark Jones because he's been doing it so long. It's so crazy to see him now getting credit in 2020. Right. Man, in the 90s, he was on Pac-10 football. I'm like, Mark Jones has been doing this for 30 years. Now he's getting his love, man. I grew up with Mark. I felt like, he was always in my living room. I think for me, it was when I joined the Steiny Guru show where I was able to show a little bit more of my personality and on the pre and post game show with the 49ers, because as we know with Pop, I was, it was the Papa show. I was basically the placeholder and, I wasn't getting the touches that I wanted to get. I was, he was taking 25 shots. I was maybe taking 5 to 7 shots, if that, So it was like I had to be a little bit more reserved. So I think with Steiny and Goo, I was able to be a little bit more of myself. And and be a little bit louder and a little more boisterous, or a little bit, where you throw a little slang here and there and get Steiny up to speed on the slang. So I think on that midday show, I was able to build that confidence to be me. And also I think Kev knows this, when I was doing an NBC show with Fab, where it was like right before the NBA finals, and I don't know anything about TV, right? I did a little TV in college, but I'm a radio head. I'm a writer. Like, TV, what? I looking at their rundowns, but they was like, dude, just be you. Just be you. Like, I wore a suit, and they were mad at me. You know what I'm saying? It was like, nah, this ain't you. Be you, man. Dress how you want to dress. And I think getting those reps with Fab and then doing the midday show, that's when I really felt like I could be me. And now on this morning show, it's like, there's no doubt. It's like, man, we got a brother on the airways. And I think it means something, man. I think it means something to a lot of kids who, this is not just black kids who are reaching out to me. It's black kids, there's Indians, there's Pakistani, there's white kids. There's a who's who. But I think by them being me and me being myself, it gives a lot of other people to be confident to be themselves. So to answer your question, Jordan, I know that was a little long-winded. It was really the Steiny Goose show where I really started that midday show where I could just be me.
I wanted to follow up with the Mr. Fab, doing pregame show with Mr. Fab. I think there was, and I might have the cast of characters wrong, but I want to say like E40 was on the desk with you at one point, maybe Too Short, maybe Snoop. Someone Snoop. I thought it was Snoop, but I wasn't quite sure. What's it like? You go from being the editor of your paper in City College to hosting a pregame show on TV for the NBA Finals with Snoop Dogg, E40, Mr. Fab. Like, what was that like? Man,
let me tell you, Kev, like that day is going down. I told myself that night, if I get fired tomorrow, I've done it all, man. I'm good. I've accomplished a lot, because on the midday show that day, we had Charles Barkley on. Papa and I had Charles Barkley on. And I asked him a question about, how the NBA is always about the offseason, free agency, and not really the game, which is what ticks me off about the NBA. We don't talk about the game enough. We talk about what's going to happen in the offseason. So I had asked Barkley something like that, and he goes, young man, that's the best question I've ever been asked. And my phone's blowing up like, bro, that's Charles Barkley, dog. And so later that day, I host a show. Snoop comes up to the set, and I'm looking back at the video. The daps went perfectly. Like, I was like, man, I didn't bust a head. The daps are perfect. The daps are perfect. And I'm sitting up there looking at that picture. And like the first half of that game, it was game 4 when the Raptors went up 3-1. That first half was a blur to me, because I'm just looking at my phone. I had to put it down because people were like, you just did a show with Snoop, 40, Fab, and then Pilo's up there later on, and Too Short. And I'm just like, I had a glass that night and was just like, I know the Warriors lost. They're down 3-1. They're probably not coming back in these finals. Who knows about Kevin Durant? But, man, that's one for the books right there, man. And that one, that was just it. Now, you talk about a surreal moment, because we all grew up listening to Snoop. We grew up listening to 40. We grew up listening to Fab. And to have all them dudes on the set at one time, and I'm conducting the bus, I'm running the show and making sure they're on track and throwing the break. And, I think we showed a picture of Clay in the hot tub with the white girls, right? I was like, Snoop, what do you think about being in the hot tub with the snow bunnies? And like, he's laughing and Fab's laughing. And he was like, and I was like, did I really just say snow bunnies on there? Like, oh, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I was like, I got away with that. And Kev, that day, man, was epic, man, because it was like, it wasn't one of those like mama, I made it moments, but it was like, damn, like, where's this thing going? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did that just happen? And the buzz that came off of that, I think really catapulted me to another level in a lot of people's eyes, another stratosphere where it was like, okay, this kid is for real. Like, he can hold his own with the big stars like Barkley, Papa, Greg Papa, and Fab, as you guys mentioned, Fab and Snoop. So that day, I'll never forget that day, man. That was one for the books. And like I said, Warriors lost. I don't care. I'm sipping some yak at the house that night thinking, like, what just happened today? What just happened?
I love it. And then, of course, just for the record, in Atlanta, we were growing up listening to T.I. and Luda and Jeezy and all those guys. So,
oh, yeah. Oh, hey, you know what's funny, Jordan? You know what's funny today in Atlanta? There's like some kinship there, because when Atlanta really started to blow up, like late 90s, early 2000s, we was bumping all the Little John. T.I. Urban Legend was in That was in my CD player all day long. No skips at all. Luda, of course, throw them blows. Like ATL was hot, man. We was slapping the ATL music out here. Outkast, of course, Goody Mob. You know what I'm saying? Watch for the Hook, man. We was
classic song. Watch for the Hook.
Watch for the Hook. Nobody knows about that. Cool Breeze, that was his only hit.
Cool
and he
Breeze.
had Goody Mob on there. Oh man, that song was great.
That's the thing. You see, apparently Goody Mob, they're coming out with something, I think, next week.
I heard
going all of them, yeah. So I'm definitely gonna make sure to check that out. But yeah, just to pivot for a quick second here. Obviously, the World Series just ended. You know, most people in the Bay Area are not happy with the results. I'm one of them, but for a different reason, because the team that should have been in the World Series obviously lost to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But everyone's talking about what the decision that Kevin Cash made, and I've heard some of the conversations that you've had about it. And every way I look at it, whether you do leave Snell in, you take him out, either way you look at it, there was no right decision about that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, look, if he gives up 2 runs, then people are going to say, "Why'd you leave him out there? He hadn't completed 6 innings. He hadn't completed 6 innings all season long, right? I mean, he was kind of struggling to get his form back and go long in the baseball games. It just felt like, though, in that moment, when you look at that situation and their bullpen, I mean, Kevin Cash, that's what Tampa does, right? They use their bullpen all day long, but it was like, Dodgers are up on your pen. You guys are hanging on for dear life. If I'm going to go down in that game, and this guy's got 9 strikeouts, and I'm looking at the next 3 batters, Mookie, Corey Seager, Muncy, Turner, they're 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts.
And lefty.
I got to go down with Blake Snell. I have to go down with Blake Snell in that situation and say, you know what? It's your game. The one thing that bothered me that nobody's really talking about that situation is that he didn't even have a conversation with Snell on the mound. Like we saw in these same playoffs, Dusty, and we all know about Dusty and pitchers, whether or not he pulls them out too late or too early. He at least had a conversation with Greinke. It was like, you know what? Zach Greinke's the best I got. Take the ball, son. This is your game. We're living or dying with you. At least have a conversation with Blake Snell and look into his eyes and be like, you got this, kid? You really sure you got this? Like, let him go. That's your former Cy Young Award winner. So a lot of people think that's the worst move in World Series history. I don't know if that's the case, but it's up there with me. Like, I just couldn't believe it because he just felt it right away. And you keep going back to the well with Nick Anderson. Like, Nick Anderson was getting lit up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He lost his magic. And so, like, if you're going to go with somebody, go with Fairbanks. Don't go with Nick Anderson or go with your closer because that was basically a save situation in that moment. So I don't know how Kevin Cash can walk that back, and you rob the kid of a moment where Blake Snell may never get back to the World Series. He may never get that situation again where he's on the mound like a kid in the backyard pretending like he's pitching in the World Series. So it drove me crazy, man. But look, there's no doubt the Dodgers were the best team. They were loaded. And I'm still mad at your Atlanta Braves, Jordan. I mean, 3-1, Ozuna doesn't tag or he leaves early. Oh, my Lord.
And then you run into a double play in Game 7, too. That just completely destroyed all momentum.
Yep.
Second and third, nobody out, grounding into a double play.
Right. I don't believe it.
Impossible. Bonta, I know we only have you for a couple more minutes. So just while we're on the question on the topic of sports takes, as someone who has watched the Warriors as long as you have, what would you like to see Golden State do with the number 2 pick?
I've been in on Wiseman. I mean, from day one, I've kind of, I've obviously flip-flopped and looked at Anthony Edwards or trading the pick. But if they're going to keep the pick and James Wiseman is there, I got to take the guy with the size and the athleticism because they desperately need to get bigger. There's no doubt about it. They have no size right now. They need some length, athleticism. And what situation for Wiseman, who was the number 1 player come out of high school, we know that where he's going to Memphis or he could have gone to Kentucky. Let him grow with Steph and Clay and Draymond and be around these veterans. Look, Mark Spears, talking to him, we know Mark Spears from ESPN. Mm-hmm. He was like, dude, he's like a baby KG right now. I'm like, whoa. Baby KG, homie from TNT, Jason, he's like, dude, he's a young Chris Webber. I'm like, wait a minute, what? So we had a high school coach on who coached against Wiseman in his last high school game, and they beat Wiseman out there in East High School, Memphis, where they won the state championship. And he said, look, man, we had to do everything we could against Wiseman. Like, This guy looked like Chris Bosh out there. So I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Those are three. Like, wait a minute here. I'm willing to take a chance on that kid where I've only seen him for 3 games, and he's basically been prepping for the NBA for the last year. I just think Wiseman's the move, man. I'm not in on LaMelo Ball because how's LaMelo going to handle coming off the bench? He doesn't know when he's going to play. And you need somebody who can at least try to play defense. I don't believe LaMelo's there right now. Anthony Edwards is intriguing, but you already got Wiggins and Clay. Where's he going to play? Are you going to go small all the time? I don't think you could do that in today's NBA. Not like you did with the Hamptons 5 with Kevin Durant, Iguodala, and sometimes Livingston. Obi Toppin, I didn't see enough of him. I think the tournament with Obi Toppin really hurt him. Not having that tournament, I think it really hurt him, especially for Bay Area fans to see who he really was, because Dayton's a great program, good basketball team. They're playing in the A-10. How good is that conference? You know what I'm saying? I wanted to see him play against the Dukes, the Michigan States, and the Kentuckys in a tournament. So when I look at those 4, and even the guy from Israel, is that the guy that's going to fit with the Warriors right away? I don't know. For me, fellas, I want to get your thoughts on it. Wiseman's the pick for me.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. And I think especially when you look at what we've seen in the league and what has dominated the league these last few years or so, right? These big guys that are versatile. I mean, you can even put KD in that category because he's 6'10", 6'11". But obviously there's Anthony Davis. I mean, LeBron 6'9", can do everything. So if you have a guy with that potential to do that and not only be that for, again, like you mentioned, he can just come in and be a young guy on a team that even without him, they would be a playoff contender, championship contender, what have you, with everybody coming back next year. So now all of a sudden you get to learn from them, learn how to be a leader from Draymond, from Steph, from all these guys. And then, even years down the road, if it works out, you still have you pivot to another cornerstone guy in your franchise. I think it's easy.
Yeah. And I just think about, all right, if you draft Wiseman, just the depth you have, like you're bringing Marquise Chris off the bench, and Marquise Chris was great for Golden State this last year. Pascal as a 7th man, Jordan Poole, I really liked him in the scrimmage, and I know it's just one scrimmage on October 1st, but I thought Jordan Poole was really turning a corner before the pandemic hit. You have those 8 guys. Damian Lee was averaging 12 a game last year, and when he played rotation minutes as part of that finals team in 2019 before the postseason, like he had a 19-point game at Philadelphia when the Sixers were at the peak of their powers. And then my guy Alan Smilagich in 2023, he's going to be a killer. Future rotation player. Don't forget about him. So I just think that this team is good. They were so old, quote unquote, back in 2019. Now they got a lot of good young depth, and Wiseman would be a very intriguing piece to add to that puzzle.
The Marquise Chris point is great because he came around last year, especially those last 2 months, get you damn near a double-double. He's got athleticism. He can run the pick and roll, plays a bit of defense. You're right about Poole. Poole was starting to turn that corner right before the pandemic, where he was figuring out the NBA game, has some confidence there after an atrocious start. Pascal, can't forget about him. You're on that. Damian Lee just plays hard. The dude just plays hard. I'll roll the dice with a dude who plays hard and knows his role on the squad. So I'm excited, man. And if you bring in Wiseman, let him get that sniff of starting those first 20 minutes. Let him get out there with Steph and let him get out there with Clay and grow with these guys. I'm with you guys, man. I think the Warriors are in good shape.
Absolutely, because, again, what we talked about, it's almost like the injuries last year for the Warriors is a blessing in disguise for them going forward. Because all these guys that did get the minutes that we're just talking about, they're going to see those same minutes if those guys are healthy. And then to top it off, they got some big wins. I know the season overall wasn't great, but they got some big wins with those guys. Like obviously, the one I pointed out was the Christmas game against the Rockets. Things like that can be huge. And not even that, they also kind of got a feel for this is how Chase Center is going to be when we're back rolling and rocking. And even that first, it was Toronto when Steph came back, his first game back on TNT. It's like, all right, this place could be going. Like I want to feel more of this. So I think it's, it's look out, especially if they do get Wiseman.
Yeah, no doubt for sure that will be interesting to see. But Bonta, I guess just one last question for you, and we thank you for coming on. Obviously, you're a big 49ers guy, big Giants guy, big Warriors guy. And I'm just curious, how have you noticed your fandom change, or whatever word you want to use, from when you were a fan watching these games to now being a paid media member covering these teams?
Man, that's a great question. I try to look at it from the other side now. Yes, I'm a fan. I love the Warriors. I love the Giants. I love the Niners. People know that. I'm going to always slant towards those three teams. But I always try to have that, what Steve Kerr always says, appropriate fear. So who's the opponent? Who are they playing? What are they bringing to the table? So I study the opponents. I study who's within the division, who's within the conference, and just try to be real. And by being real, you're not going to please everybody. We were having a conversation today on the morning roast about, Shanahan, the next quote unquote Belichick. And I'm like, wait a minute here. First of all, he's got to win a ring. But two, can he just be the next Andy Reid? Can he just be Mike Shanahan? And who's to say that McVay's not up there with Kyle Shanahan? If Mike Vrabel's, and that sparked the conversation, it was like, oh, you talk about the LA Rams, screw the LA Rams. But hold on, McVay, and you got to enter those points like, look, I'm going to give credit when credit's due. McVay took a 4-12 team with the worst offense in pro football, turned them into explosive offense, number one in the league, and made a wild card game. Oh, follow that up with a Super Bowl appearance. Last year, okay, they fell short. They won 9 games. You know what I'm saying? And now here they are again in the thick of things in the NFC West. So I try to look at things at the other side as much as I can and just be real. You got to be honest. Not everybody's going to like what you say. Like when I looked at last year when they played Toronto, I said, look, man, they need Kevin Durant for Toronto. And all the Warrior fans on Twitter, all the high-profile Warrior fans, you tripping, bro. Oh, stop it. Delete this tweet. I'm saying, you play Toronto in the finals with Kawhi, you don't have KD, it's going to be problems. It's going to be problems. They're long, they're athletic. And so nobody, you got fans who just – they think everything's great with their team. They think their team is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So you just got to keep it real. And as long as I keep it real, I feel good about everything. And know my role, okay, I can't just go off the deep end and say, hey, the Niners going to beat the Seahawks and they're going to blow them out. They don't stand a chance. Wait a minute now. This is what they need to do to win. This is how they win. But they got Russell Wilson. They got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So let's talk about that. So Kevin, I just try to keep it 100, man. I try to keep it 100. And I think people will respect that. It's like, okay, he's a fan, but at least he's keeping it a buck.
So while we're keeping it real, and I guess this is my last question for you, would you disagree with Chris Jones, who says that the Jets, even though that they don't have any wins, are still a good football team?
Who said that?
So it's Chris Jones. I think it's the D lineman for the Chiefs. And, how everyone always says something nice about who you're playing. And he said, it's still a good football team. People forget that because they don't have any wins.
Yeah, they don't. Chris Jones is a funny dude, man. He's trying to get his team. I know what that's all about. He's trying to get his team fired up, trying to make sure they keep their focus and don't take the Jets lightly, don't go out there slow and sloppy and flat. He's trying to get that defense fired up. He knows damn well Chiefs are going to win by 3 touchdowns at least. And they just got to find a way to get up for this game and hype them up. Jets are just a dumpster fire, man. Golly, man. And I don't blame Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is coming out. I know he went out there saying, you never know what may happen. I think he's going to pull an Eli. He's going to tell the Jets, I'm not coming there. You better trade that pick. I'll go back to Clemson. I'll use this as a crutch, and you better trade the pick or move on because I'm not coming to play for your team. So Chris Jones is a funny dude, man. That Chiefs team, I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Clark said that for the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Chris Jones said it, I'm like, all right, he's just trying to fire up this team, make sure they don't take the Jets lightly, and go out there and have a nice Sunday.
Awesome. Now, Bonta, again, we appreciate you coming on. Again, everyone that tunes into this, please check out the Morning Roast again, 6 to 10. Bonta will be on there. And tell Joe Shasky, leave my Braves alone. I heard what he said on Tuesday. Leave him alone.
Dude, he still has the pain of 1993.
93, yeah.
And I try to tell him, be mad at the Padres for giving the Braves Fred McGriff. Be mad at them. Don't be mad at the Braves. They got crime, dog, man. Blame the Padres, man. Get over it. This is a new fun bunch with the Braves, man. Acuna Jr. and Ozuna and Albies. They got ballers in Atlanta. I like that team. I know. Hey, Kevin, these dudes walking down the first base line like this. You don't even tag up on time? Come on, man. Can't be taking selfies and do that in the NLCS. But I'll tell Shasky hate everything. If it don't got red and gold, orange and black, blue and yellow, he hates it. So I'll tell him to pipe down in the Braves, Jordan. I'll try.
Oh, man. Yeah, thanks so much, Bonta. It's been great having you on, and best of luck to you, Joe, and Kate. Really looking forward to seeing you guys continue to grow and develop that show.
Hey, man, best of luck to you guys, man. Kevin, I know you've been grinding for a long, long time. Loved it when you got that opportunity to call a Warriors game.
Thank you.
We played those highlights out even when the Pop was like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, man, that's Kevin Denner right there. What are you talking about, Pop? Let's go. And Jordan, man, I've been following you on Twitter, man. You got a lot of good stuff, man. Keep grinding, man. You guys know where to find me if you need me, man. Always a pleasure.
Hey, Bonta Hill eats for free on the From the A to the Bay podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Collard greens coming for Bonta, no doubt.
I need them greens, baby.
I got you.
Collard greens, man.
Yeah, I got you.
Mama don't live with me no more.
Say less. I got you. All right, everyone. Welcome back to From the A to the Bay podcast. Again, we just had Bonta Hill on, a phenomenal interview. And Kevin, I mean, that is awesome. And I think everything that you think of when you talk about great people in the sports media world, that's it. You're talking about, coming from outside of the industry, coming in, bringing your own style, charisma to it. And I mean, it's awesome. And I think the other part of it is, I think people forget the reason why we get into this in the first place is because we're a fan of sports or a certain team. That's where it comes from. And obviously Bonta hit on that as well. But I mean, that was a fun interview. Yeah,
Bonta is an awesome dude. I first met him at Summer League. So, we're both Bay Area guys, but I met him in Vegas for the first time, 2014 Summer League. He was doing his thing coming up in the business then. He knew R.C. Davis, my boss with Golden State / Santa Cruz. I'm out there. I wasn't even out there doing Golden State games that year. That was a year before. But, that's when I met him. And learned that he was good people and all that. And then it's been awesome to see his, career really, expand from there, really just kind of burst onto the scene. He was at Yard Barker for a while doing videos, fun videos with Eddie. I hope I say his last name right. Maisonette, I want to say. Those two were doing some great videos. They would come up to Pac-12 Network's Pac-12 media days for basketball and stuff like that. And just kind of brick by brick, as they say in the San Francisco 49ers organization, he's built himself a nice empire here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad I asked the question about who that mentor or was, because I mean, he even talked about at the beginning of his going back to school of, you're looking around and it's a quote unquote young guy league, and it's, what am I doing here? And then you start getting some success, and then you have someone that brings you in to help you out. Because I could resonate with that, because even with me, it was, all right, well, I'm doing Stanford baseball games, but is this it? And don't get me wrong, I was grateful to have that opportunity. I love doing it. Yeah. But then, just as someone that always wants to overachieve and do this and that, that was the question. And then, of course, Kari comes back to me, asking me if I want to do a women's game. And then it just kept going from there. And it came back to that passion of nope, never mind. I know I can do this. And it's just because I had that one person to give me that start and give me that reaffirmation of no, you're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give him too big of a head, but if it wasn't for Kari Jones, I'm not sure I'd be doing play-by-play right now the way that I am. I don't think I would have been able to get on the Pac-12 networks, because my first sport there was water polo. And it's just that was one of those sports that Kari had me do. It was every sport under the sun. And a lot of these I hadn't really watched all that much before I started broadcasting the games. And so he taught us really to just kind of go with the flow and adapt on the fly. Yep. And I thought that was the greatest thing that he's taught you and I. And yeah, that's as much credit as I'm going to give him for now.
But anyway, so shout out Corey. I'm sure he'll check this out later. But so one of the things, though, as we're starting to wind down, we talked about the World Series with Bonta. And there's the decision itself, but there's something with me, I think, that's an overarching thing with sports. And that is this increasing influence of analytics, where the thing is, technically, I saw a tweet about this the other day. It was well, people are saying, take this, nerds, take that, the plan failed and whatever. It's well, technically, the Dodgers used analytics. They basically what equated to a bullpen game. Now, they had to do it for a different reason, because you had a Rosarena coming up there in the second inning, 2 on, after he already took Gonsolin deep in the first. But at the end of the day, it was, all right, this guy comes in, he gets a few innings. And this guy comes in, he gets a few innings. And so that it's the same thing. But the question is, again, this is over all sports. At what point do you say there are too many numbers and too many calculations going into it besides your generic feel of the game?
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate question, and not to say that I'm a feel guy. Like Dusty Baker's known as like the ultimate feel manager. Like he goes off his gut. That was like kind of what for better or worse in San Francisco. That's like what people kind of knew him as, and I'll equate it more to basketball since that is a sport that I kind of follow a little more than others, and it's like some of this stuff, and all right, I'm going to come off as ignorant as hell here, but I see effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, why do I need to know these numbers? I know how a guy shoots from the field. I know how he shoots from three. I know how he shoots from the free throw line. I know the attempts he or she's taking. Why, like, what does this add to me besides, like, making it more confusing for the audience? And so I kind of feel that same way about like, all right, it's cool that he hit a ball 100 miles an hour, but what does exit velocity actually tell us about what's going on? Like, all right, he hit the ball hard. And I mean, I know baseball is made for numbers, but at some level, and I'm a numbers guy, but if you just keep on throwing out launch angle and this, that, and the other thing, and you just keep on adding all this stuff, it's going to be too much. Simplify it a little bit.
I agree 100%. And I think one thing which is interesting about launch angle is I think if you are an organization looking to bring in a pitcher, then you look at that. And I say that for the reason of, okay, let's say if you're the Rockies and you do not want to bring in a pitcher that usually gives up a high launch angle because of how the ball flies there. Or maybe even how they can play in LA, how it looked, how the ball was flying there during the playoffs. So it's like, all right, maybe to launch the guy that gets fly balls, not the best guy here. Whereas if you're maybe in Miami where the ball doesn't fly as much, or even in Oracle Park, it's like, okay, no, we can live with fly balls because the ball doesn't fly here like it does. So things like that make sense. Another one I think that correlates, the shot chart in basketball. And they were showing the percentage of where balls were hit.
Or the spray chart in baseball.
Yeah, the spray chart. Yeah. That makes sense because obviously if you're in basketball, it's okay, I can't let that guy get to this spot because he loves shooting here. Or in baseball, and this is what they've been doing a whole lot more, we're going to shift because apparently nobody knows how to go the other way or whatever when you see there's a whole side of the infield open. Yeah. But it's the guy usually hits the ball here, so I'm going to put a player over here. I mean, that makes sense. But the thing that doesn't make sense for me, now let's go on to more specific about the decision. And the first time that Snell was out against the Dodgers, he was pulled after it was a 2-run homer. Now that I understand, even though he was up to that point, he was pitching a great game.
Yep.
But 2-run homer, I can kind of get that one. And this one, it was, I think, a single.
One out single.
Yeah, 1-out single, and then that was it. Where, again, you talk about how dangerous this lineup is for the Dodgers. Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, who won both NLCS and World Series MVP. Not just the fact that they're also lefties, if you want to look at numbers that way too, but they really hadn't done anything against them in those first 2 outings. Now, and the thing is with pitchers, and I mean, if there's any pitchers out there that are listening, you can tell me I'm wrong about this. The whole idea about don't let a guy see a lineup a third time through, to an extent, does not make sense to me if you have multiple approaches to go at a certain hitter. Like that's the reason why they say that. I would think is that the approach is going to be the same. So you think a hitter is going to lock on this pitch and this count, this pitch and that count, or whatever it may be. But again, if you have a guy that's just been confused at the plate and he's confusing those guys, they don't have the original approach.
Yeah.
So you keep him in, and because he was around like 70 pitches. Meanwhile, you had Tyler
73.
73. Meanwhile, you had Tyler Glasnow, and don't get me wrong, phenomenal pitcher, but he went 102. I want to say with a lot less control, a lot less just power and input on the game. So why is it that the guy that does with 73 pitches is going about the same amount as the guy with 102? Like that like part of that for me doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's a philosophy of, all right, well, when Glasnow was pitching, our season wasn't on the line. So we're like doing this move not to lose the game instead of like trying to win it is like one way that I kind of see that like kind of played out. And yeah, I mean, and the guy they brought in, Nick Anderson, had given up like
Struggled
runs in 6 straight outings.
6 straight, and then that made it 7. Yep.
That makes very little sense why you would bring that guy in. Bonta alluded to it in the interview. Like, all right, at least, bring in someone else from your pen. I mean, no, they brought in Fairbanks later in that game, but Fairbanks didn't have that great of an outing. But, that was another guy who thought that, would have done better in that situation than Nick Anderson did. And just to not walk back my comments on true shooting percentage and effective field goal percentage, because I can see basketball Twitter, one day, months from now or years from now, say, oh, this guy doesn't believe in analytics. Like, I do. I just think there are certain stats that tell you more than others. And I would be, I'm more interested in, defensive rating, offensive rating, rebounding percentages and those kind of numbers, as opposed to like, we already have these shooting numbers. Why do we need these extra shooting numbers? And then like, all right, well, yeah, this takes into account free throw attempts, the frequency of this. And then the math behind effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage to like try to explain that. And I'm just thinking about this from a broadcast perspective. If I were to try to explain that on the air, like my head will explode, let alone the audience's.
Right. You're probably too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's cool for like Zach Lowe to write about it in an article because, here's a guy who really understands analytics. Here's a guy who really understands basketball at a level much greater than me. But like for someone to say this on a broadcast, like I guarantee you, I will not be saying true shooting percentage and like explaining that anytime soon on a basketball broadcast.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think, again, the thing for me too is what the biggest thing that you cannot put a number on in sports, and obviously specifically baseball, is momentum and just this sense of confidence. The Rays offense, and again, this is exactly who they've been the whole playoffs, is the pitching, and then Arozarena does what he does, and then if you get anything after that, well, that's a bonus. That's what it's been for the Rays. But you had this sense of they probably thought, hey, you know what? I know we only have one run, but with this dude on the mound, like one might be enough. This might be it. And it was almost kind of reaffirmed with the Dodgers and the interviews. I think Mookie Betts had one, Cody Bellinger had one about when they saw Snell coming out. It was like, I mean, Cody Bellinger was being asked a question, and midway through the question, he was just like, he started laughing. And that's the thing too, where a lot of times, especially as a fan, a baseball fan, you'll watch somebody else, the team, a pitcher that you're going against, and they're just on it. And it's like, man, I just hope we can take some pitches, maybe foul some off, get his pitch count high so we can get him out. Like when they're rolling, that's just what it is. And all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, he's gone. Hey, well, here we go. And then I'm sure if you're the Rays too, it's like, oh man, we need to score now. And again, that's something that they just had not really been doing on a consistent basis outside of Arozarena for the whole playoffs.
Yeah, and John Smoltz made that exact same point that you did too. So like, here's one of the best pitchers of our generation making this point on the air. And he didn't say it that night. He said it earlier in the series, I want to say. But it's like the team just, there's a collective sigh of relief. Like, oh, we don't have to deal with those nasty pitches anymore. I mean, this guy was getting them out in under 15. He had 9 strikeouts in 5 1/3 on under 15 pitches an inning.
It's incredible.
Like, that's ridiculous. I think like it was probably around like he was, probably around like, what was that, like 13 to 14 pitches an inning? The pace he was on. Mm-hmm. It's incredible for the number of strikeouts that he had, that he only had 73 pitches. And I mean, you just got it. I mean, of course, we're Monday morning quarterbacking this, but I would like to think that I would, hey, all right, if Mookie gets a hit, all right, maybe I think about it.
For
But
sure.
he had tortured Mookie in the
Yes.
first two at bats.
In a way that we've never seen. We did not see Mookie pretty much look the whole playoffs. Like, even if it wasn't hitting home runs or extra base hits, he's doing something to get on base and make things happen.
Yeah.
But the thing for me, and I'll equate it to basketball in this sense. Everyone always says when the playoffs and things slow down, you have to have that one guy that can get you the ISO bucket. Everybody says it. And again, like, you look at the Warriors. The Warriors have always been about you move the ball, ball movement, player movement. But and I mean, they had a situation where they had three guys that can give you 30 points a night, easy.
Yep.
Steph, Clay, KD, and they still were all about ball movement. And then the playoffs come, it's all right. Nope, now it's time to get out the way. Let this guy go to work. You find the matchup, go to work.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. Baseball, that shouldn't be the same thing. Okay, cool. This was what you did in the regular season. That's the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
At this point now, it's like, if you got that dog, you got to roll with them. You got to roll with it. And so that's the thing for me, where it's just, I understand analytics to an extent, but it cannot drive your whole operation. And the thing too is, and Bonta made a point about this, about Snell not making it back potentially to the World Series. If you're the Rays, because we know how financially restricted they are, they don't really ever keep that marquee guy for the whole of their career. Yeah. So who knows for you? Like, I think they're still going to be a good team, but obviously there's still the Yankees in your division. The Red Sox aren't going to act broke for that much longer. And then you got this young group in Toronto / Buffalo that it looks like they're still learning and what it takes to be in the playoffs and be that type of team. This might have been their shot to do it for who knows how many years, and that they could have blown it.
Yeah, and also, like, who knows how many teams are going to make the playoffs, period. Like, this was a 16-team playoff this year. Like, so there was ample opportunity to make the postseason. Like, that window is probably going to shrink sizably in future postseasons with a normal 162-game season. So, like, like, when you're there, you got to take advantage of the situation.
You have to. And again, just even looking at the rest of the American League, I think the Astros showed that once you get them into one of those do or die scenarios, they're still pretty good, trash can or not. The A's are going to come back. I know they have some free agent things that they need to tie up, but I imagine they're still going to be a pretty good team. The Twins are still, I think, on a rise. Now, of course, they need to win a postseason game, but, they're going to be a good team. Obviously, there's the White Sox, and I mean, well, we'll see what happens with La Russa now, but a lot of really good young talent. It's a stacked league, even just outside of the division. And ask a lot of teams anywhere. When you're there, the hardest thing to ever do outside of winning a championship or getting to a championship is making it back.
Yep.
When you're there, you better do everything you can to win it. There is no, that's a guarantee we'll be here next year. No such thing. No such. Even the Dodgers.
Yeah. No,
they
totally.
were on the ropes. I mean, they probably thought the same thing last year when they got knocked out by the Nationals of, all right, well, let's just get through this, and then we'll see the Astros or whoever in the World Series. And no, the Nationals knocked them out.
Yeah, and I'm reminded by the hoodie you're wearing over there.
Yes.
Atlanta Falcons.
Absolutely.
And then Jamal Anderson the next year gets, injured in Monday Night Football, Week 2 against the Dallas Cowboys, and that was the season. They went 5-11 the year after going 14-2, and it took them years to, get back into the playoffs. So, yeah, it's one of those things. You got to take advantage while you're there.
I mean, even look at them from 2016 to now. So it's really one of those things where, again, when you see these teams like the Dodgers and the Patriots, what they did, the Warriors for what they did, you have to appreciate it because it really is just that difficult as we're saying.
Yeah.
But obviously, unfortunately, the game itself has not been one of the main headlines because of what happened after. So during the game, the report is they found out, I think during the second inning, about a positive COVID test for Justin Turner. In the seventh inning, he's taken out the game, but then he's back out on the field celebrating, taking pictures with everyone after the game. And I just remember, Kevin, when I was reading that, when I was seeing it, because remember they did the game break to say, hey, I just want to let you know it's the reason why he came out, it's because of COVID test. And then I see him back out there. I was like, okay, maybe that test was a false positive, and someone on like the social team for the Dodgers or MLB is just slow to get out the release. Say, hey, no, he was okay, so that's why he's out here. There's nothing bad about it. But no.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to say it in other words than Justin Turner is an idiot. Like, it's the single dumbest thing you can do. And I understand you want to celebrate with your teammates, but do you not realize what – and you can tell me, oh, well, all right, yeah, this, you only win the World Series so often. Well, you only live through a global pandemic so often too. And, that happens to be killing more than 225,000 Americans right here and more than 1.1 million people worldwide. It boggles my imagination. Like, it boggles my mind that you could go through an entire season where, like, entire clubhouses are getting hit with the coronavirus because, whether, teams were taking it serious or not. There's, 1,000 people dying every day in America, and then like you get a positive coronavirus test and you think it's a good idea to go sit next to your teammates and take a picture maskless and kiss your wife. Like, what's going on here? How does this make any sense?
Yeah, there's so many questions I have about it, but the one thing that really upsets me the most is when I think about some of his teammates. One being David Price, who obviously did not play this year. He decided to opt out. And then you think about A.J. Pollock. A.J. Pollock, and I think Buster Olney did a story about this. They had a premature baby that was born before the year started. Obviously, they couldn't go near the baby, touch it, because it's like, well, we got to make sure you don't get the baby COVID or anything like that. And it was at a point where, I don't know, A.J. thought about opting out for the year. His wife talked him into playing. And then I think AJ himself actually got COVID. And then the big fear then was, is he going to give it to the baby? Because, and thankfully the baby is since birth has been doing a lot better. Like, I'm so happy to hear that. But that was one of the first thoughts I thought about is you just had somebody on your team that's on this field right now with you who just went through one of the biggest nightmare scenarios he could possibly go through. He and his wife, in terms of the baby and the health of the baby, is he going to live? Whatever could happen in those possibilities. And this is how we're going to handle this. And don't get me wrong. I'm sure it would have been like, hey, I really wish I could be out there celebrating. I understand that. I really do. Especially again, if you've been on the team for this whole run and 100%. You've been really right there the whole time. But at some point, though, it's just like either you're selfish or Kim Kardashian just became the second most tone-deaf person in Los Angeles. Too.
Yeah, I mean, after a couple of weeks of asking everyone to quarantine, I decided to buy a private island and celebrate with my teammates after testing positive for the coronavirus. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. And I don't mean to be harsh in calling him an idiot, and I'm sure he's a smart individual and, an intelligent human being, obviously a great baseball player. Mm-hmm. But how do you make that decision, and how does that make any sense? And people were saying, oh, well, he only exposed himself to people like who are in his bubble. Well, yeah, now he's exposed all those people to the coronavirus because he has tested positive for it. And just because those other people tested negative doesn't mean they're going to continue to test negative, because now they're around someone who is maskless, who has tested positive.
Kissing the trophy, holding it,
Yeah. I mean, if I'm his wife, like, okay, why are you kissing me? I'm single, so maybe that's why I'm single and Justin Turner's married. But like, I don't want to be anywhere near. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near my husband.
Oh no, I I get it. And the thing for me, though, the question I have, and it's not I have doubts. It's just I'm legit curious because now it's okay. This test was yesterday. It was the day before Game 6. And he had the positive result. Okay, if you know he has a positive result, even if you think it might be false positive or whatever it is, shouldn't be in the game to start off. Now, if you get the report that it was a negative, okay, cool. Wherever he is in isolation, you get into the stadium. If they want to bring him in at the end of the game to do whatever, then cool. You do it that way. But the other way around, where you're trying to see, like you're hoping, it's like the guy sitting next to you, oh man, I really hope that's a negative test. I hope it's a negative. Like and I mean, even go back to the other point. Like Dave Roberts is a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
Like there's so that's the thing for me. Where from the MLB standpoint, I just have questions about how this whole process looks. If you're telling me he got the results by the second inning, why is the system in place where you find out results not before the game starts? It's just like questions with that I just have about the whole protocols in general, because I mean, like you said before the postseason, it was chaos. Marlins are going down, like almost a whole Marlins team went down. This team has to cancel, that team has to cancel, and then play like 24 games in 21 days and things like that. And then you get here, it's like, okay, it looks like we get something going, and then but it ends with this. And that's the thing that is unfortunate, where it should be outside of the Bay Area. Congrats to the Dodgers. You finally got over the hump. Congrats to Clayton Kershaw. You finally got your ring. But we're not talking about it as much as we should.
Yeah. It's just – and the one thing that always kind of boggled my mind with all this, they say they were in a postseason bubble or whatever, and yet there's, 10,000 plus fans at the game? So it's not a bubble, right? Like, unless I'm missing something. And like, obviously they're not being in contact with the fans, but it still kind of defeats the purpose of having a bubble.
Well, and my big question from the get-go was when they released the whole the plan. Wild card's going to be here, and then the division championship series are going to be here, and then the World Series. I'm just like, okay, well, if you have to move to all these places, that doesn't sound like a bubble to me. Now, the Dodgers probably had the closest to a bubble because they played the Padres and the Braves and then the Rays in the same place. But everybody else was moving all around and catching flights and this and that. So it's like, is this really a bubble? But, again, hopefully that everyone involved, they'll have negative COVID tests coming up, whether it's on the Dodgers, spouses, you name it. But and then another question is Rob Manfred okay? Like seriously, it was one of those things where, and never would I think about saying this watching someone professionally on TV. I'm just like, I hope he's drunk. Like, I hope that's what this is, because that was kind of scary.
You know what? I kind of turned off the TV after the game to go lose some money in poker. So you're gonna have to enlighten me here. What happened?
Slurring words when he was doing the MVP award, giving it off to Corey Seager, slurring words and things like that. It's like, are you okay? So, and obviously most people from outside of the health standpoint aren't going to feel sorry for Rob Manfred. Obviously, there's a lot of things that baseball fans disagree with him on.
Yeah.
One of them. But again, I have to turn the fan side off for a second. And again, Rob, I really do hope that you're okay.
Yeah, it's the other thing, didn't they close the roof? So it went from being an outdoor stadium, which is, safer, to an enclosed, like, where you shouldn't have any fans in it.
Yeah, it was. They switched it up from game to game or something like that. It wasn't always one or the other, right?
Yeah, because I remember there was like a Fox showed some graphic that says like outside it's 39 degrees, but inside the stadium it's 74. So how could it be 74 in the stadium unless like the roof was closed? And I mean, it just okay. I mean,
But good news is we have reached that point in the show where it is time for Kevin's weekly question.
All right.
Katie, what you got?
Yeah, so as someone who traveled 3 years in the D League, G League now, I'm always intrigued by travel accommodations. So I got to know, Waddy, who had the best hotel in the Pac-12 and who had the worst hotel?
Best hotel. That's a good one. I would say the coolest one that we ever stayed in was the first Rose Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah, because we stayed at the Marriott in LA Live.
Oh,
So
nice.
that
Oh,
was
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Just
The
go out.
JW Marriott. Oh,
Yeah.
that place is awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was so cool. So you're going around, just walking around LA Live, socializing. There's a Staples Center right there. We went to as a team. We went to a Clippers game, and that was right there in the middle of Loft City. So that was fun. And then Nor Davis, everyone, you saw him on the previous episode. He had an uncle, I think, that worked for the Blazers. And so the Blazers were playing the Lakers the next night. And so we got tickets to that, went to go see Kobe and this young rookie for the Blazers named Damian Lillard, who, he looked impressive. I think he might
all right. So this was your first Rose Bowl then?
Yeah, first one.
Okay. Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, this guy, he might have a bright future. But no, I think like being in LA Live just itself, like that was so cool. So I think I'd have to put that one there. The worst, I'll tell you why I said this one was the worst.
Okay.
Is the Claremont over in Berkeley.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the reason why, before everyone's like, oh no, that's a beautiful place. It's like, no, and it is. Like that has nothing to do with it. It's just I have a ghost story.
Okay, yeah, because it's haunted.
Yes, it is. It is.
What's your ghost story?
So this was, I'm trying to think, what year is this? I think my junior year when we were at Berkeley. And, usually the night before the game, we have a team movie. We're all in this big conference room, meeting room, whatever you want to call it. We watch a movie. So I skipped out on the movie and, I went to Matt Doyle, told him, say, Matt, I got to work on this assignment. I just need to knock it out. It's a CS assignment. He said, all right, cool. It's fine. So I go up to my room, I'm working. And while I'm working, I keep hearing the sound of kids just like running in the hallway. And so I'm thinking, this is a kind of a nice hotel. Like, what parent is letting these bad, kids just run around everywhere? So I, go back to working. I hear it again. And it's like, they're running. Like you hear it and a little bit of laughter. And how a lot of doors, they'll have a little bit of a crease but on the bottom where it's like there's a little bit of airspace. So you can kind of see the light coming through from the hallway or whatever, the next room over. And I would look under to see if I see any shadows. I didn't see any shadows running when I heard the kids go by. So that's when I was just like, okay, something's up here. You know what? I'm going to stop working for a minute. And the next time I hear these kids running, I'm opening the door saying, hey, cut it out, like chill out. Let's stop it.
Yeah.
So I hear it again. And like I tell you, it was quick, like boom. So I could see like there's no way you could get into a room or anything before I get outside. There's absolutely nobody in the hallway.
Oh, damn.
Absolutely nobody. I was like, you know what?
I'm not sleeping that night.
I'm good off this. I'm good. But yeah, so just like off that alone, like the hotel itself is pretty cool. But even if you go up to it, it's like all white. It looks like one of those places where you would expect like a haunted Halloween movie or something to happen. So just because of the ghost story, I'm gonna put that as the first.
Man, yeah, that's I wouldn't want any part of that. The rumor in G League travels is that the hotel in Canton is haunted. I've never been there. Santa Cruz has never played a game in Canton. We've kind of a weird quirk there, but yeah, we had a couple. There were 3 hotels that we had where it's just like you just wanted no part of. Yeah, there was the most frustrating one was in Los Angeles because you would want to be in Los Angeles, like in a league full of like just these minor league towns where you're in the middle of nowhere. Oh, we get to be in LA, but they had this place called the Hacienda, and it was bad. Bugs and towels. I remember the vending machine had the Pepsi can with the white background that was like discontinued in the late 90s. Yeah, so like that's how long it had been there. A Coke can had like crinkled into itself, and then one of our players got scabies from the beds there.
Gosh.
Yeah, so that was bad. The Boise Hotel and Conference Center in Boise, Idaho, bad scene. And then in Fort Wayne, The place was so old that your hotel room key was an actual
key
like this, and not like one of those magnetic card stripes.
Oh,
and
goodness.
I walked into my room one time, I turned on the light, and that also turned on the TV, the bathroom light, and like every appliance in the room. It was some sort of electrical magic trick. And I also got diarrhea twice in Fort Wayne, so I don't like going there. But yeah,
sounds like not the place to be.
Yeah, no. Apparently, so we got the hotel in LA condemned, and like the D League didn't let any people travel there anymore.
Nice.
Thankfully, it did take someone getting scabies for that to happen.
What about Fort Wayne? Do they still go there?
No, you know what? They don't go to that place anymore. And they had a great restaurant there. It was called Don Hall's Guest House was the name of the hotel. But it's like these D League teams would, they would just strike a deal with some some local hotel, because the D League teams would be responsible for putting you up at a place. And so just whatever they can get the cheapest deal at is where they would put you. And like D-League regulation said you had to have a 3-star accommodations or better, but there is no way in hell that some of these places had 3-star accommodations. So Fort Wayne, Boise, and Los Angeles were those 3. And then Iowa wasn't that great either, but I remember Iowa because that was the night that the Manti Te'o story. That was when I was in Iowa. So I just was on Deadspin all night reading that story. But yeah.
Oh man, no, there you always hear the stories or rumors about certain D League or G League hotels, especially a few years before.
Yeah.
About how bad those could be. And then, of course, last but not least, for everyone tuning in, this is our last episode before November 3rd comes around. And again, I just want to remind everybody to go out there. Go out and vote. It's your human right. It's your civic duty. And again, if you see with everything going on right now, and I don't understand how you couldn't go vote. And the big thing for me, I always say this, Kevin, you can't tell me that your vote does not matter if people are trying so hard to make sure you can't do it.
Yeah, there was just a report on CNN today that like there was some professor in the state of Georgia who like it took him hours longer to vote than it took him to buy a gun.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely inexcusable. I've kind of like, I started this podcast really like amped up wanting to talk about stuff. I just saw Scott Atlas, the president's doctor, on TV trying to like lower the testing in the United States, and how Florida has lowered its testing after he said it, and Scott Atlas is a complete idiot. And you have a president who on like a list, the White House had like this list of accomplishments, and on that list was ending the pandemic. I didn't know the pandemic had ended, when we're still getting 80,000 cases a day. And you just, you can have your pick of racism, sexism, family separations, science denying, and tax evasion, and any other thing you want. But if that isn't enough of a reason to make your voice heard, and heard in a certain way, and I am not a Democrat, I am a registered independent.
Same.
Yeah, I don't think the Democrats have pitched a perfect game either. So it's not about that. To me, this is about human decency and having someone who's going to listen to experts in areas that said person is not an expert in.
And there's definitely a lot of areas where he isn't. But again, so like we said, for all of us, again, I'm not going to be the one that sits here and say, you have to vote for this person, vote for that person. Let your voice be heard. That, I think at the crux of it is the main thing that we're saying here. And then also, of course, everyone during this election process, and as everyone said, the election's already started. There have been millions upon millions of people that have already voted. In some places, it's like the early voting numbers are the same as the actual voting day numbers in previous elections. Like I said, this is huge. And so, and not even just talking about the president, it's got to be your local level people too. Make sure you read up on it. you're making the right decisions there, decisions you think were going to be best, not even just for you, but for those around you.
Yeah, 100%, Waddy. I mean, and this is a byproduct of being unemployed, but I spent like 10 hours on my ballot like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, so just like reading through every proposition, making sure I knew who I wanted to vote for city council in my area, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the down ballot stuff, like obviously president, like you probably have your opinion made on that one way or another at this point. But like the down ballot stuff that you don't necessarily know everything about, that's the stuff that's going to affect you if just as much, if not more.
Definitely more. And then of course, again, Georgia, same things there. And also everyone that's over in Georgia, Louisiana, a lot of that Gulf Coast area. I know Hurricane Zeta is right there. A lot of my friends in Atlanta were actually telling me earlier today their power's out. I think it's over 600,000 people in the state of Georgia. Last time I checked, without power.
Jesus.
Everyone, again, please be safe. You're in my prayers. Love you guys. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone, stay safe. We'll see you next week.